Good morning and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. In Amos 7:14, the prophet Amos was being told by people who didn't like his message to go preach somewhere else. Amos replied, "I am no prophet nor a prophet's son, but I am a herdsman and a dresser of sycamore trees. And the Lord took me from following the flock, and the Lord said to me, 'Go prophesy to my people Israel.'" My reason for mentioning this passage from Amos is that it tells us something a bit surprising. Amos wasn't a preacher and never intended to be a prophet. He was a herdsman, tending to the flock, and also did some work as a tree surgeon. Part of what that means is that God calls ordinary folks to do God's work, and also that the work ordinary folks do is a calling from God. We call this a vocation. And while that might mean the kind of work we do, it also means the ways we live our lives in response to the call of God. Martin Luther is well known for saying, "The Christian shoemaker does his duty not by putting little crosses on the shoes, but by making good shoes, because God is interested in good craftsmanship." So doing our work and doing it as if unto God is the calling of the Christian. This week, with today being Labor Day, I thought we might spend a little time talking about the kinds of daily labor that were performed and mentioned in the Bible. And it's a good time to reflect on our own occupations and to see the place of our vocation within them. Today, I want to speak briefly about weavers, dyers, physicians, and scribes. Weaving cloth was an essential vocation of Bible times, and in fact, every home had a loom. Wool would be collected from their flocks and then spun into yarn using a hand spindle, pulling and twisting the wool fibers into yarn. And on an interesting side note, this is where the word spinster comes from. Apparently, women were so adept at spinning yarn that they could do it while they walked, talked, or even ate. The yarn would then be put on the loom to weave clothes and blankets. Connected to this work was the occupation of dyeing the cloth. These were the folks who specialized in different dyes to make fabrics more beautiful, but it wasn't an easy task. They didn't have dyes like we do today, so all they had to use were natural pigments. For example, the secretion of a shellfish was the only way to get purple, and it was very valuable because each shellfish produced only enough for one drop. So purple was typically too expensive for anyone but royalty. In Acts, a Christian woman named Lydia is mentioned as a seller of purple. Blue came from the rind of a pomegranate, and crimson from a grub that fed on an oak tree. There were also physicians in Bible times too, although we wouldn't recognize much of what they did as anything like modern medicine. Some of the remedies they offered were dipping in the Jordan River as a cure for leprosy, or treating boils with a plaster of hot figs. Job talked of worthless physicians, and Mark referred to the woman with the hemorrhage that she had suffered under many physicians. On the other hand, Jeremiah cried out for a physician, and St. Paul called Luke a beloved physician. Finally, today was the work of being a scribe. I guess the closest thing we might have to this today would be a paralegal. In a society where many people didn't know how to write, the scribe would sit in front of the government headquarters with his parchment and ink. And there he would write letters, draw up contracts, and make legal documents. So just like today, the people of Bible times had their regular daily work to do. And yet, in the midst of that, God called them and invited them into something larger, God's purpose for them and for creation, just like God invites us. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.